This evening, I'll be sharing the word. Thankful for the opportunity. Our pastors, they've been traveling. They got to go to Ohio to celebrate the homegoing of their Aunt Nancy. And when you're saved and you live for Jesus, we don't have funerals, we have celebrations, amen? I've been to some funerals, it's like a straight up party. And I've been to other ones that are like, you don't even want to cough, it's so thick in there. My grandpa, he's 91, and I remember him telling my grandma what he wants his funeral to be like. And he says, Faye, when you guys have my funeral, he says, I want you guys to turn the music all the way up. And I'm like, that's my kind of funeral, amen? That is a celebration. So thank you for keeping them covered in prayer as they've been traveling. Tonight, with the Lord's help, I want to speak a little bit about this topic, red flags. Red flags. How many of you guys have ever heard the phrase or the statement, that's a red flag? Red flags have become really a popular term that is in our culture now. When people go on a date, sometimes there's a lot of red flags that show up, right? When things happen and they look into it, they find out, well, maybe, there were a lot of red flags that led up to that thing that had happened. Maybe even in your own life, maybe you went through some trauma. Maybe you had some things happen to you. Maybe you were in some bad relationships. Maybe you had some friendships that fell apart. And afterwards, when you come out on the other side of it, oftentimes you could look back and you could be like, well, maybe there was a few red flags that I ignored. Can I get a witness? So a red flag is something that is warning you of a possible danger or letting you know that there is something that you should be concerned about. Something that you should be real cautious of and watchful over. So something that somebody says during a conversation, that could be a red flag. Something that you see somebody do, that could be a red flag. If you meet somebody and they're pursuing you and they want to take you out on a date, and they want to be your boyfriend or your girlfriend, and you find out that they are 35 years old and living in their mother's basement, that is a big, huge, blinking, bedazzled red flag, okay? Now, when it comes to my life, there are some things in my personal life that I consider major red flags when it comes to people. Now, if this is you, I apologize in advance. We got to keep our relationship professional. One of the things I consider a red flag are when people like pineapple on their pizza. I'm telling you, you got to watch out for people that eat pineapple on their pizza. There's something going on inside of them that's not on the surface. You may not see it now, but rest assured, it's going to show up eventually. This one's even worse. People who like their steak well done. You might as well not even eat a steak. If you're going to eat a steak well done, then don't even bother wasting your money on that good piece of meat. Anything past medium rare is just an insult to God's creation. I got a few witnesses out there. The next one, people who don't come to midweek service. Now, I could say that tonight because all y'all showed up, you made the cut. I'm not worried about you guys. I'm worried about all the people that usually sit next to you on Sunday. They're watching online. We're being cautious of you. Here's another one, and this one really gets me going. People who don't know how to use the words two, and two properly. Just don't even use them. Or just verbalize them. Don't type them out. Don't write them down. Just Maybe you need Siri to help you out when sending a text message. I do not know, but this is a red flag. Here's another one. I only got 2 more. People who won't text back but are always on social media. And the worst part is when these people that don't text you back, but you see them all over social media. They're online, they're posting, they're putting on stuff on their story. And these same people are not smart enough to turn off their red notifications. So you can see that they read the message. You're like, I know you're there. I know you opened it up. I know you're online. I know you're not busy. That is a red flag. And the final one is people who think that all water tastes the same. It does not taste the same. It does not taste the same. That spring water is gross. I don't care what creek you got it out of. I don't care what mountain in Kentucky that it came out of. Spring water is disgusting. I'm not even kidding. If you bring me a spring water, if you bring me Ice Mountain, you might as well throw it in the trash. I don't even know who gave me this. We're going to be talking after service. You see, they even took off the label. They're trying to trick me. They didn't want me to know. So we're living in a day where people are becoming more aware of red flags. We've been in a tragic season in our country where, unfortunately, there have been shootings happening back to back, it seems like. And the interesting thing is when they investigate these things that have taken place, oftentimes they could look at these shootings, they could look at these tragic events that take place when people do things they don't understand. How could somebody do that? Oftentimes when they investigate, they find out that there were a lot of red flags that were in this person's life. Maybe this was somebody that was displaying signs of mental health issues. Maybe they were people that were posting certain things, that were searching certain things, that had certain kinds of hobbies. There might have been a lot of red flags in their life. And here's the thing is that, we've got to be aware of these things in our own life. We've got to be aware of these things when it comes to the people around us, when it comes to friendships, especially relationships, when it even comes to the people that are in church around us. Now, I want to say this, that some of the, and I'm going to just pivot a little bit, some of the storms that we go through in this life are simply because God is leading us somewhere, and in order to get us there, He takes us through process where He then develops us and He teaches us to walk in faith. That's exactly what happened when Jesus got His disciples in the boat and He was taking them someplace new. They weren't just on a trip, but they were on a journey, and it was a journey of faith where Jesus was trying to teach them no matter what comes our way, unexpected or expected, you need to be able to stand strong in the faith even in the middle of it. And that was a test that the disciples failed because when the storm came, they panicked, they freaked out. But what Jesus was trying to do in them was He was trying to establish a strong faith. And if you continue on to read what happened next, as soon as they hit the shore, a man full of demons comes at them. What happens when you go somewhere that you weren't prepared to go and you encounter something that you don't have the faith to face? That's why Jesus takes us through storms. That's why sometimes we experience the tragedies in life that might come our way. Sometimes God is trying to lead us somewhere and do something inside of us. However, there are other storms that happen in our life, and they are simply because you got on the boat with the wrong person. This is what happened to the people who let Jonah on their boat. The reason why their lives were put in jeopardy, the reason why they were the ones that ended up throwing their possessions overboard was because they allowed the wrong person on their boat. It's because they ignored the red flags. It's because they knew that somebody was running away from their purpose. They knew somebody wasn't doing what God had called them to do, and yet they allowed themselves to journey with that person, and that journey brought tragedy into their life. So you've got to be careful, and you've got to make sure that you don't ignore red flags. So this message tonight, it could be a message about dating. It could be a message about marriage. It could be a message about friendship. It could be a message about sin. It could be a message about guilt. It could be a message about your actions. But whatever message you receive tonight, I pray that it's the message that the Lord wants to speak to you individually. Here's one thing I know is it's that when red flags are ignored, tragedies happen. When you know that something was off when you were dating, but you still get married. When you know that there was something off about your work environment and the people who worked there, but you still took the job and stayed there anyways. When you knew that these things were happening, when you saw signs, when there were red flags flashing all around you, and yet you ignored them, that's usually when tragedy happens in your life. I want us to go to 2 Samuel 11, 1 through 17. And it talks about the story of David and Bathsheba. It says, in the spring of the year when kings normally go out to war, David sent Joab and the Israelite army to fight the Ammonites. They destroyed the Ammonite army and laid siege to the city of Rabbah. However, David stayed behind in Jerusalem, and then late one afternoon after his midday rest, David got out of bed and was walking on the roof of the palace. As he looked out over the city, he noticed a woman of unusual beauty taking a bath. He sent someone to find out who she was, and he was told, she is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Then David sent messengers to get her, and when she came to the palace, he slept with her. She had just completed the purification rites after having her menstrual period, and then she returned home. Later, when Bathsheba discovered that she was pregnant, she sent David a message saying, I'm pregnant. Then David sent word to Joab, send me Uriah the Hittite. So Joab sent him to David, and when Uriah arrived, David asked him how Joab and the army were getting along and how the war was progressing. And then he told Uriah, go home and relax. David even sent a gift to Uriah after he had left the palace, but Uriah didn't go home. He slept that night at the palace entrance with the king's palace guard. And when David heard that Uriah had not gone home, he summoned him and asked, what's the matter? Why didn't you go home last night after being away for so long? Uriah replied, the ark and the armies of Israel and Judah are living in tents, and Joab and my master's men are camping in the open fields. How could I go home to wine and dine and sleep with my wife? I swear that I would never do such a thing. Well, stay here today, David told him, and tomorrow you may return to the army. So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem that day and the next, and then David invited him to dinner and got him drunk. But even then, he couldn't get Uriah to go home to his wife. Again, he slept at the palace entrance with the king's palace guard. So the next morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and gave it to Uriah to deliver. The letter instructed Joab, station Uriah on the front lines where the battle is fiercest. Then pull back so that he will be killed. So Joab assigned Uriah to a spot close to the city wall where he knew the enemy's strongest men were fighting. And the enemy soldiers came out of the city to fight. And it says Uriah the Hittite was killed along with several other Israelite soldiers. Now, when you read this story from the Bible, it almost sounds like a story that doesn't belong in the Bible. It sounds like something you would see on Jerry Springer. It sounds something like you would see, they would have a crime show about it. It would be a whole series on Netflix. I mean, this is something just crazy, right? Crazy. And we're talking about David doing all of these things. We're talking about David, the giant slayer. We're talking about David that took care of his father's sheep. We're talking about David that was anointed to become king. We're talking about David that wouldn't even touch Saul because of the anointing on his life. We're talking about David that just wasn't a king, but he was also a priest. He understood the presence of God. We're talking about David who was a psalmist, who would write and who would sing out to God in praise. We're talking about David who is known as a man after God's own heart. David, this mighty man of God, and yet he falls into sin and temptation. And here's what's important for every single person in this room and listening to understand, is that nobody is exempt from sin. Every single person in this room, we're made from the same dirt. The same dust that God breathed life into when he created Adam, we are made from the same thing. So that means that there's no holier than holies when it comes to people. It means that every single one of us, at the end of the day, we are all made from the same dirt. We are all from the same place. And every single one of us, we have struggles, we have temptations, and we have battles that we must fight. Now let's talk about some red flags that happened when it came to this story, because this whole thing is a red flag. It's like every sentence is another red flag. It's like, okay, did nobody realize what was going on here? Did nobody see the signs of what was happening? Did nobody catch on to what was going on? The first red flag was this: when people start to change their patterns. You see, David didn't go out to war like the kings normally do. Because when they would go to war, the kings would assemble their armies and the kings would lead their armies into battle. The kings would camp with their armies. They would lead their people. They would be there as a support, as an encouragement. But David, for some reason, decided, I'm going to change things up a little bit. And even though all the other kings are going to be there with their armies, I think I'm just going to stay home this time. And here's what happens when you're not where you're supposed to be. It leads to problems. And you know when something is off about somebody because you can see that they start to change their patterns. You see, David should have been in a place where he was out leading his men, but instead David had changed his patterns, and instead he was at home betraying them. And I wonder, why didn't anybody ask King David, why aren't you with your men? Why didn't you go out to battle? King David, why are you here? Right? Why are you the only man in the kingdom? I mean, if that's a red flag all by itself. If there's only one man in the kingdom, you better get out of that place, because I'm telling you, it's not good. And it's the same way with people. It's a huge red flag when people start to change their patterns. That's the beginning of it all. There's a change in their patterns. When somebody all of a sudden starts sitting somewhere else. I'm talking to people in the worship center tonight. When you used to be the loudest, most hyped person on the front row of the church, but now you're on row number 8. You're upset at the usher because he wouldn't let you sit farther back. You won't raise your hands. You won't shout. You used to like and share everything that was going on at your church. Now you can't even click the like button anymore because you're so offended. You used to be somebody that used to serve, but now you're somebody who's caught up with new people. You're caught up going new places. And here's the thing, that there's nothing wrong with change, but there is a problem with breaking commitments. And when you just ghost people in your life, when you stop being where you're supposed to be, when you stop serving when you're scheduled to serve, when you stop showing up when you said that you were going to be there, when there's a change in your patterns, there's a major red flag going off. And I'm telling you, you better watch out when people start to change their patterns, because something is off about them. It's no different with your friendships. your relationships, your marriage, your coworkers, your boss. When people start changing their patterns, you better start paying close attention to what's going on in their life, because there is something going on. When somebody all of a sudden starts working 2 hours later every day, but you don't see it on their paycheck, I'm telling you, they're not volunteering at Wheeler Mission, right? They down the street, I don't know where they're at. They could be at Fatty Patty's for all I know, but there's something going on in their life. There's a major red flag. Here's the next one, when people start looking. You see, not only did King David stay behind, not only did he change his patterns, but King David is up on the roof spying out the land. He's up there looking. And I'm not just talking about he's up there looking at the sunset. I'm not just talking about he's looking over his kingdom saying, oh Lord, you have blessed me so much. I'm saying King David is up there and he's looking for something. Something that he don't have, something new, something that's going to catch his attention. And here's the thing about looking, that if you look at something long enough, it will become an obsession. If you look at something long enough, it'll become an obsession. That's why so many people struggle to break free from pornography. Because if you look at it long enough, it becomes an obsession. It takes control of your thoughts. You can't stop thinking about it. You can't stop looking at it. You can't stop going back to it. When you start looking at something that you shouldn't, you start entertaining thoughts that you shouldn't be having. And it all happened because you had a wandering eye. And here's the thing, you don't shop around when you've got a made up mind. You don't shop around when you've got a made up mind. What do I mean? I mean, if you know what you want and you know where it's at, say you want a new vehicle, you found it online, it meets all the criteria, the price is right, the color's right, the leather seats are right, everything looks great about it. When you show up to the dealership, you say, no, this one's mine. I don't want to look around. I don't need any more. I don't need any less. I already got exactly what I need right here. This is the one I want. And when you've got a made up mind about your spouse, when you've got a made up mind about your church, when you've got a made up mind about your relationship with God, then I'm telling you, you won't be somebody that's out looking around. Because if you're married and you catch yourself looking around, you'll find yourself running around. You'll find yourself sleeping around. I'm telling you, you've got to have a made up mind in your life. It's the same thing with God. If you don't have a made up mind about God, you'll be in the grocery store looking at alcohol. You'll be looking at cigarettes. You'll be looking at all this stuff that used to keep you bound and wanting to go back to it, and it'll become your obsession because you don't have a made up mind. You'll see an open door and you'll run because you haven't made up your mind about where God has you right now. You've got to have a made up mind. Just like when Jesus set his eyes to Jerusalem, we've been talking about it through our theme focus. Jesus set his eyes on Jerusalem and he said, this is where I'm headed. This is my purpose. This is my destiny. This is what I've been created to do. This is the calling on my life. Jesus wasn't looking around. Jesus didn't have time to entertain things that weren't part of God's plan. Jesus didn't have time to obsess over things that he shouldn't. You've got to make up your mind. Amen. Here's another red flag. When business is closed, but it's still advertising. I don't know why the Lord gave me this message tonight, but I'm telling you, I was a victim of this. I'm serious. I ignored this red flag and it got me good. I was trying to buy my wife a nice birthday present. And my wife has this really bad addiction to coffee. So I thought that I would fuel her addiction and that I would buy her a nice espresso machine where she can make drinks at home and where it would really save us money. I'm like, I'll just buy you the machine and then we won't have to stop at Starbucks every day. So I find this really good deal. And I'm telling you, that's another red flag. If it's too good to be true, it is. It is too good. It's not true at all. So I found this website, and they even had good reviews. They had like 4.5 stars, like hundreds of people gave them good reviews. I'm like, oh man, and they had this killer deal. It was like hundreds of dollars cheaper than anywhere else. And I'm like, man, I've got to have this. I look at their website's nice, it's fancy, it's got stuff popping like on sale this week, 24 hours left. And I'm like, oh, I've got to hurry up and get this. Time is running out. So I buy this thing, I get an email. I get an order confirmation. Here's your confirmation number. It's expected in 7 to 10 business days. So I wait a week, there's nothing there. I wait 2 weeks, which is 10 business days. There's nothing there. So then I call the company, and it goes to voicemail, but the mailbox is full. I'm telling you, they got me good. I emailed them, and nothing at all. I emailed them again, nothing. I tried calling them again, nothing. I sent them an email telling them that I was going to sue them and press charges, nothing. I'm telling you, it's a red flag when a business is closed, but they're still advertising. Thank the Lord that I found favor and I got my money back one way or another. But I want to talk about this for just a moment. There's a lot of people that I believe they give Bathsheba a bad reputation. Because I don't believe that Bathsheba was up there on a rooftop bathing trying to put on a show for the king. I believe that she was just doing what she was supposed to do. She was going through this process to become ceremonial clean again after she had come out of her period. I know this is real spiritual in here tonight. And here's the thing, I don't agree with women always being blamed because of the lust of men, because of their aggressiveness. And I just want to say to all you women out there, I apologize because I see how our culture frames women as the culprit when the men are the ones that are the aggressors. I just wanted to get that out there, find some favor. You see, times are a little different now because we live in this lustful age where people love attention. People are on the rooftop advertising themselves. People are running around naked, putting on a show, trying to draw attention to themselves. And I'm going to tell you this tonight, and I mean this, that if you don't cover it up, it's going to get you in trouble. If you don't cover it up, it's going to get you in trouble. Because you're going to attract all the wrong people in your life. You may want affirmation, you may want attention, you may want love, and all of that is great, but if you go down this avenue, then it's going to cause trouble in your life. Here's something I know, and I learned from this, that you don't advertise unless you're open for business. So I'm telling you, even all you people in relationships who are married, don't go around advertising all your stuff if you're in a covenant marriage with somebody. You need to stop posting pictures of yourself so much. You need to cover it up. You need to dress modest. You need to be respectful towards your spouse and honor the commitment that you have. The same way with men. I'm telling you, I text Caitlin one day because normally I go to the gym super early in the morning. During the time I go to the gym, it's like the old people only. Older people. Like I'm getting there at like 5:15 in the morning, right? And it's the more mature seasoned crowd. Well, one Saturday I decided to sleep in, so I went to the gym later in the afternoon. And I text Caitlin and I was like, "Oh my gosh." I said, when did sports bras become considered a shirt? Because it wasn't just one person, it wasn't just two people. There were like 5 people running around in a bra. And I'm like, good Lord, if I did that, they'd be kicking me out of this place. They'd be pressing charges. They'd have to shut the whole gym down if I did that. I'm telling you, if you don't advertise unless you're open for business. And here's another thing. If you're not selling something, then you shouldn't be entertaining customers. If you're married, you shouldn't have customers. You may be like, I'm not selling it. Well, you're entertaining customers. If the door's open, if you're letting people in, if you're letting them compliment you, if you're letting them talk about how nice you look today, if you're letting them like everything that you're putting out there, then there is something wrong, and that's a major red flag. You've got to have a made-up mind. You better be able to stand up and tell people, hey, I'm closed, and I reserve the right to refuse service to anybody. I'm married. I'm in a relationship. I already got a church. I have a relationship with God. I'm already married to Jesus. I ain't backsliding for nobody. I'm telling you, you better tell them to leave you alone, because you're gonna, you got better things for your life. If they ask you what you're wearing, you better tell them you got the full armor of God on, and that's all they're gonna see out of your life. You gotta have holiness and righteousness in your life. Because if you attract somebody because you've been advertising, then you're gonna have to continue to advertise to keep their interest. And the minute they pass a new billboard, the minute they drive by somebody else that looks a little bit better than you, you're gonna be kissing them goodbye, because they were never interested in you in the first place. So what's the takeaway? If you're single, cover it up. If you're married, cover it up. Sometimes I wonder if people live on a boat because they're always fishing, trying to get a compliment. Oh, did you notice? Yeah, I've been working out. You know, I've been lifting weights. Keto. Really, all they did was buy a pair of leggings one size smaller. I'm moving on. I need to move on. You guys. Here's another red flag. I've got to hurry. When you break covenant. You see, what David did was David broke covenant. What covenant did he break? David broke his covenant with God. And I'm telling you, your relationship with God should be a stronger covenant than you even have with your spouse. My relationship with God, I shouldn't ever compromise that. I should protect my relationship with God just as much as I protect my marriage with Caitlin, because I consider it a covenant. It's not a convenience, but it is a covenant where I have given him my life. It doesn't belong to me. I give it to you. We might as well be one, because we're in this together. That's why the church is the bride of Christ. You're in covenant together. And I'm telling you, what David did, when he broke his covenant with God, not only did he do that, but he destroyed a marriage covenant between somebody else. And what he did, it angered God. It cost a man his life. What he did would end up killing his child that he would have with her. And what he did tarnished his reputation. So when I say you better be careful about looking out for red flags, and you better be careful about who you get yoked up with, I'm telling you, you better listen, because anytime you break covenant, it's gonna bring consequences into your life. Well, it's just one person. It's just one time, you know, David and Bathsheba, they just got together. It's not a big deal. Look at what it cost him. Look at what it cost Bathsheba. Look at what it cost their child, who would be born and then die. Look what it cost Uriah, the man who was out fighting for the person who signed his own death sentence. Here's another red flag: when people overcompensate. You see, David slept with Uriah's wife. David had committed adultery. David had sinned. And then David tried to overcompensate for his sin by lavishing Uriah. He brought him to the palace. He gave him gifts. He gave him food. He tried to overcompensate. And when people in your life all of a sudden try to overcompensate, then that is a red flag. When all of a sudden they're saying things to you like they didn't used to say them. They're just lavishing you with compliments, buying you stuff, doing things, and something, it's nice, but it's off. It's a nice thought, but something is off. I appreciate you getting me this, but something ain't right about this. And I'm telling you that some people, they'll try to build a resume and they'll try to use it later on to get you to say that what they did was okay. Because when you find out about the adultery, they want to be able to say, well, I did this to you. I took you here on this trip. I bought you these things. You know, I tried to do this. I said this about you. I posted all these nice things on the internet. They try to overcompensate to make up for what they did. Here's another red flag: when people lie to the people closest to them. You see, Uriah, the man that David had killed, the man whose wife that he had slept with, Uriah wasn't just some soldier. Uriah was one of David's mighty men. Uriah was one of David's most trusted and skilled soldiers. Uriah was one of the people that stood by David's side, that fought for him, that was with him when other people had abandoned him. Uriah was somebody that completely trusted David and had devoted his complete loyalty to him. The fact that Bathsheba was even so close to the palace for David to see her is a representation of how important Uriah was. Because not just anybody lived around the palace. You see, Uriah was a man of stature and a man of importance, and that is why they lived so close to the palace. And yet Uriah, this person that was so close to David, this person that was so loyal, all it took was sin and temptation and desire to throw all that out the window. You see, people underestimate the power of sin. Because Uriah was somebody that would literally die for his king. And yet David ended that relationship because of sin. Because he desired somebody that he didn't even know. He just saw it and said, I want that. I want her. Go get her. Bring her to me. And when you see people in your life that start lying to the people closest to them, when they start talking about people that used to be their friends, when they start bad-mouthing their own family, when they start talking and gossiping about their pastors, whoever it might be, when you see people start lying and betraying the people closest to them, then that's a red flag and you need to watch out. The next one, when people try to manipulate you. You see, David wanted Uriah to go back home and sleep with his wife because David had gotten her pregnant. If I could get Uriah to sleep with his wife, then maybe Uriah will think this baby's his and I could just forget about everything. He was trying to cover up his sin. And here's what happened. David couldn't get Uriah to go home. He gave him gifts. It didn't work. He fed him. It didn't work. He brought him to the palace. It didn't work. He tried to sweet talk him. It didn't work. So here's what David did next. David tried to get him drunk and change his mind. And here's what I don't understand about people who advocate for drinking alcohol. If alcohol is a good thing, then why would King David try to weaponize it against Uriah? Try to use it to manipulate him. To get him to have a lapse in judgment, to get him to go back on his word, to get him to go back to his wife, even though his moral stance was, I'm not going back without my men. And yet David tried to manipulate him through the influence of alcohol. And I'm telling you, when people in your life are trying to manipulate you and they're trying to pressure you, whether it's through other people, whether it's through things that they like doing, things that they're bound with, I'm telling you, that's a major red flag. If you don't want to do something, if you don't believe in something, and they're pressuring you to do it, they are not your friend. I remember in high school, I was 17. It was my junior year in high school where I really made a commitment to God. I said, God, I felt a call into the ministry. I made things right with God. It took me a while, but I stopped cussing. I remember I stopped drinking. I stopped doing all these things, but I had a best friend named Angel who was also the high school drug dealer. He drove a Jaguar. He would always, I don't know if he had an inside man, but he always knew when they were bringing the dogs to sniff his car. And he'd be stashing stuff in my backpack, in my locker, all this stuff. But here's what I loved about Angel. I remember he called me one night. He was at a party, and I could obviously tell something was going on with him. He'd been on some stuff. Back then, ecstasy was a big thing. And so I went to this party, and I pick up Angel, and I go in the party. I'm looking for him. People are getting drunk everywhere, doing all kinds of stuff. I'm trying to find Angel. And before I could find Angel, and think about this is the crowd I used to drink with, party with, hang out with. And as soon as I walk through the front door, there are about 4 or 5 people that surround me. And they start trying to get me to drink. And I'm telling them I don't drink anymore. I don't drink, I don't cuss, I'm not into this. This isn't for me. You guys do what you want, but this isn't my thing. And they got aggressive. And they got hostile, and they started to try to pressure me to drink. And I'm thinking that I'm about to get in a fist fight or get jumped because I'm refusing to drink this. I'm thinking they're going to try to force this stuff down my throat. And out of nowhere, here comes Angel. He busts through the group. He pushes one guy, hits another guy, and he says, hey you bleepers. He said he doesn't want anything to drink. Pastor's not gonna let me preach anymore. What I loved about Angel is even though we lived our lives differently during that season, he never tried to manipulate me or to pressure me into doing something that I didn't want to do. He never tried to manipulate me into compromising my beliefs, compromising my convictions. And I'm telling you, even if you're in a relationship and they're pressuring you to compromise your beliefs and your convictions, that's a red flag. Because if that's happening while you're dating, then you don't even want to see what's going to happen when you're married. The next one, when people are willing to sacrifice you to get what they want, the worship team could come. David had Uriah stationed where the battle was the fiercest. David couldn't manipulate Uriah, so he said, I'm going to get him killed. I'm going to get Uriah out of the picture. So David literally gave Uriah a letter to give to Joab, and Joab stationed Uriah in a position where he would be killed, just so that David could get what he wanted. And I'm telling you, you've got to watch out and be careful when there are people that you've surrounded yourself with that care more about themselves than you. When they're too busy to listen to what you have to say. When they want you to listen to all their feelings and be there for them, and yet they're never there when you need them. They're never there to support you when you've been with them through all kinds of stuff. You've been with them through breakups, through divorces, when they lost their job, when they didn't have money, you gave them a loan, when they wouldn't pay back, when they didn't have food, you bought them something to eat. You better be careful about the people that care more about themselves than you. It's a red flag. Another red flag, when people don't realize what they've even done. You see, it took a man of God to step into David's life and say, David, something has happened in the kingdom. There was this rich man who had all these lambs. He had all this wealth. He could buy whatever he wanted to buy. And then there was a poor man who had one little lamb that he had raised up. He had raised up this lamb with his family. This little lamb played with his children. This little lamb was precious to him. And he told the king, he said, and even though this rich man had all these things, this rich man stole that little lamb from the poor man. And when Nathan told that to David, David got furious. He said, where is this rich man? He says, bring him to me. We need justice for what he has done because it's not right. And then Nathan looks at David and he says, David, you are the man. You see, it's a major red flag when people don't even realize what they've done. When they don't feel guilt, they don't feel shame, they don't feel remorse. When they're looking for a cover-up, when they're looking for a way out instead of accountability. But like I said, when you break covenant, there's always going to be consequences. So when Nathan looked at David and he said, David, you are that man. Immediately, David, it was like a punch in the gut. Conviction consumed him. And David began to break down before Nathan and he began to say, I've sinned against the Lord. And then Nathan replied to him and he said, yes, but the Lord has forgiven you. David had repented. And he told David, Nathan told David, he said, you won't die for this sin. But nevertheless, because you have shown utter contempt for the word of the Lord by doing this, he said, your child's going to die. There was a consequence for breaking his covenant. And after Nathan returned to his home, the Lord sent a deadly illness to the child of David and Uriah's wife. And David begged God to spare the child. It says he even went without food and he laid up all night on bare ground. The elders of his household, they pleaded with him to get up and eat, but he refused to even eat. It says, then on the seventh day, the child died. And David's advisors were afraid to tell him. He wouldn't listen to the reason while the child was ill. They said, what a drastic thing will he do when we tell him the child is dead? You see, David, when he found out that the child was going to die, David fell on his face before the Lord. And he fasted and he prayed, and David remained on his face before the Lord, crying out to God, God, don't punish my baby because of this. God, don't take my child because of my mistakes. And he prayed and he prayed and he prayed, but then on the seventh day, his child was gone. And sometimes, because we ignore red flags in our life, because we break covenant ourselves, sometimes we have to deal with the consequences of our actions. Many people view God the wrong way. They think God is some magic pill that takes away all their problems. We serve a good God. We serve a gracious God. We serve a God that keeps his word. We serve a God that wants to bless his people. But we also serve a just God. And God was trying to teach David something. David was in the middle of a storm that he created for himself. He was in the middle of this storm, all because he got yoked up with the wrong person. So it says, here's what happens next. After David, he fasts and he prays for 7 days. It says, when David saw them whispering because they were afraid to tell him, he realized what had happened. And it says, he said, is the child dead? And they said, yes, he's dead. It says, then David got up from the ground, washed himself, put on lotion, and changed his clothes. And then he went to the tabernacle, worshiped the Lord. And after that, he returned to the palace where he was served food and he ate. You see, David had to reach a point in his life where he was willing to move on. Even though David had put himself in that position, even though David had to reap the consequences from his own actions, even though David had to suffer the judgment from God, David still had to reach a point where he moved on. And when David found out that his prayer wasn't going to get answered, and not every prayer gets answered. God doesn't give you everything that you ask for. He'll give you everything you need, but he won't give you everything you want. And God wasn't going to give David everything that he wanted, because the fact that David had that mentality is what got him there, that he deserved everything he wanted. So God didn't answer his prayer. And when David realized that his prayer wasn't going to get answered, here's what he did. When he realized the child was dead, he got up, he washed himself, he got dressed, he put himself back together, and he moved on. He went back to the tabernacle, he went back to the palace, and he ate some food. And there are some people in here tonight that you'll never be able to see who God wants you to be if you continue looking at yourself through the lens of your mistakes. You see, David could have become depressed. David could have isolated himself. He could have just stepped back and said, I don't want to be king anymore. God, I know you've anointed me, but I've messed it all up. God, I've committed adultery. I've committed murder. I've manipulated. I've lied. Now this child is dead, all because of me. God, I don't deserve this anointing. I don't deserve to be king. God, I don't want it anymore. Take it back. David could have ran away from everything. But what he needed to do was move on. And I'm telling you, God has so much in store for your life, but in order to get it, in order to access it, you've got to move on. Just because you committed adultery doesn't mean that you're an adulterer. Just because you made a mistake over here doesn't mean that that defines who you are for the rest of your life. You see, we serve a God that is full of mercy. We serve a God that is full of grace. And one thing about David, even though David made all these mistakes, even though David had this falling out, even though David had this moment of weakness where he was caught up in his own sin and his own desires, David was also a man that knew how to get a hold of God. You see, David knew something about God that no experience, no mistake could ever talk him out of. David knew that God is a God of grace. David knew that God is a God of love. David knew that God is a God of goodness. And what David knew is that God's grace was sufficient for him. That's why the Bible in 2 Corinthians says, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me. You see, God's grace is sufficient for you. You may have gone through some stuff. You may have some trauma in your life. There may have been some red flags that you ignored, and because of that, you may have got hurt. You may have found yourself in a place that you didn't want to be in. But I'm telling you tonight, God's grace is sufficient for you. And even though you feel weak, even though you feel broken, even though shame and guilt have tried to consume your life, His word says that His power is made perfect in your weakness. You see, look at what happened when God got David to a place where he felt weak. That's when the power of God moves in your life, where you no longer see something, want it, and then go get it, but you fall on your face before God and say, God, all I want is what you want to give me. God, I don't want what my eyes been looking at. God, all I want is what you want to give me. And what God did in David's life is God ended up using David's mistake to birth a miracle. But David had to get up out of the dirt. David had to get up out of the ashes. And I'm telling you, God can bring you out of your worst mistake. David had lost a baby. And Nathan's word over David said that David's family line would even be full of bloodshed. David wouldn't be the one to build the temple. But God can still work all things together for your good and for His glory. And even though David had lost a child, God blessed them with another one. It says, as soon as Bathsheba was done mourning, that David went and comforted her. He went and rubbed her on the shoulder, said, I know this has been rough. I'm sorry that I put you in this. I'm sorry that this is the place that I got us in. And then obviously when somebody starts rubbing your shoulder, it leads to other things. I'm telling you, if somebody's rubbing your shoulder, it's a red flag. If you're going to pray over me, you put your hand on my back, but you don't rub my shoulder. If you start going in circles with your hand, don't do it. So it says Bathsheba got pregnant. 9 months later, she gave birth to a baby. That baby's name would be Solomon. Solomon that God would look on with favor. Solomon that God would bless. Solomon that wouldn't just be any baby, but Solomon that would become a king. Solomon that would build the temple. And I'm telling you that even though you feel like what you've done, what you've been through has disqualified you, I'm telling you, God's not done with you yet. You've got to stop looking at yourself as a failure. You've got to stop looking at your past as all these mistakes. You've got to stop labeling yourself by what you've been through. And you've got to start seeing yourself as how God sees you, as his beloved, as the person who still has destiny, as the person who still has a purpose, as the person who has a calling and anointing on your life. You can't stop being the king that God created you to be. You don't stop being that queen. You don't stop preaching the word of God. It's not time to hide. It's not time to run away. It's not time to get quiet. It's time to fall on your face before the Lord and realize that there's still something left inside of you. There's still something left inside of you. Think about Bathsheba. She loses her husband, forced to do something out of fear, thinking if she says no, that it could cost her her life. Loses her husband, gets pregnant by somebody she wasn't even married to. Carrying this shame, carrying this pregnancy, not knowing how to even tell Uriah. Then she finds out Uriah's dead, and then she's carrying the baby. Well, I don't have Uriah, but I still have this child. I still have somebody that's a part of me. And then the child's gone. And you may feel like all hope is lost for you. You may feel like your dreams are dead. You may feel like it's too late to turn things around. But there's still a king inside of you. There's still a miracle inside of you that's wanting to be birthed out as you stand to your feet tonight.